Hi everybody, Kimberly Beer here. This month I want to talk about how to understand what your website is. So I run into a lot of folks who get confused about some very basic principles around websites. And it's just simply because I don't think we do in our industry and marketing a really good job of explaining this. And there's really nowhere that you can go to school and necessarily learn how to do it unless you buy one of those websites for dummies books. A lot of times people get really confused as to how do you build a business website? How do you even start? What's even the very first step? And so in this webinar today, I'm going to go back a little bit and we're going to break down the most basic elements that you need to know in order to create your web presence. And for those of you listening, you may have been through all of these steps except for one, or maybe this will help you understand how all of those seemingly arbitrary steps fit together to create your online presence. All right, so a lot of what I'm going to do today is do some explaining about how a website actually comes together and what all of those little disparate pieces mean. So we're going to be speaking some geek. So a domain is really where you start. And I like to explain to people in using a metaphor where we can compare our online presence to building a physical business. So if you can kind of wrap your head around this, so don't concentrate what's on the screen right now. Close your eyes maybe and imagine this. So you want to build a business in the physical world. If you were to approach that in the same way that you would approach building your business in the digital or virtual world, here is how that process would go. In the physical world, you would buy a lot, you would build your building, the lot would come with an address, and then you'd add decorations and your products and the stuff that you want to sell inside the building. In the virtual world, you don't start out by building the lot on which you're going to build your business. You start out with buying the address for your business, and that is your domain. We often refer to this as our .com. The .com is separate from your hosting account, so it's not attached to the land on which you are going to build your virtual business or the space where your virtual business is going to take place. That's your hosting account. That's what we call a hosting. Your .com stays with your company. You register it like a business name. It is renewed annually or biannually or sometimes longer. Here are some things you need to know about your .com. Do not, under any circumstances, ever let a company other than you have the ownership. I put ownership in quotes because that's not truly what it is. It's like the registration. Don't ever let another company be a registrar for your .com. You want to be the contact of record. You want to be the person who has the control over that. Some web companies, including some of these ones where you sort of buy the all-in-one package websites, sometimes the .com is included and that company owns the .com. Well, what happens then is that when you go to switch to a different website development company, you don't have your domain name. You don't have the control over that domain name. And so you can't move it and it becomes a problem. Also, you need to make sure that you keep your payments on your domain completely current, because what can happen is if you don't pay for your domain or renew it, then after a period of time, whatever company you have purchased it through can sell it. and then that becomes problematic for your business. I also don't recommend doing a lot of searches on a domain that you're interested in purchasing, because that can cause some difficulties as well. A few years ago, and I'm going to quote that with it being a few years ago, I had a client who constantly Googled a name that she wanted, and then she did some searches for it in GoDaddy, and then she told me to go ahead and get in her GoDaddy account and purchase it and get it set up for her business. Well, when I went to do that, some other person had registered it in a foreign country and then held it hostage for a high payment before my client could get it, and it was her business name. So be careful with that. Go and make sure you log into your GoDaddy or your Bluehost or your HostGator or your domain.com or wherever it is you're going to buy your domain. Log in, make sure you're logged in and in a secure network before you start doing a lot of searching. All right, when you're choosing your domain name, please make it as simple as you possibly can and something that you can use as consistently as possible across the web for your various other accounts. In other words, if you choose midnightproductionsinc.com, then make your Facebook page Midnight Productions Inc. Make your emails all go to midnightproductionsinc.com. Make your Instagram account at Midnight Productions Inc. Make your Twitter account at Midnight Productions Inc. The more consistent you can be with the naming, which usually starts with your domain, the more apt you are to be able to communicate that to your followers in a way that they can find you in all your various social haunts and be able to stay up with your company. So the more consistent you are, the better. That doesn't mean that it's always going to work that way. So for my photography business, which I started out as K-Beer Photo, because I thought people wouldn't want to spell out the word Kimberly, I started out with K-Beer Photo. That's how I signed all of my images, and it worked really well until I have a beloved client who got up in front of like 600 people at an event and bragged about me and told people to go to my website, kimbeerphotography.com. Well, now I had to scramble and get that. So my photography business is all over the board because I'd already established my presence on Facebook as K-Beer Photo. I'd already established an Instagram account underneath K-Beer Photo. So now I have all these weirdnesses around it, and then I go by Kimberly. It's horribly confusing. Please do not do that. Go with as simple as you possibly can. So your domain at yourbusiness.com is the easiest way to get that. You also have the choices of a whole lot of other endings after the dot. So you can do .com, .net, .info, .blog, .biz, .us, .photographer, .guru, .everything. They release new ones all of the time. If you can get a .com, that's still what people mostly register with. As a matter of fact, when you tell them to go to a different .whatever, they have difficulty with it. I have meeting software where I had to buy a .com domain because I couldn't get anyone to understand to go to meet.me. People would do go to meetme.com and then it would go to the wrong place. So it's really hard to explain that to folks. So if you can get a .com, then that is the best way to go about it. .coms are getting scarce though. So you may or may not be able to get one. You may have to choose one of those other domains to keep with the business name that you've already established. All right. Big takeaway from the domain is it's separate from everything else. Make sure you renew it and keep it current. And also make sure you register it with you as the person of record for being able to change that .com to another company if you would like to down the road. All right. Your .com will point to somewhere on the web where you have a hosting account. So in our metaphor, our hosting account is the lot, so the piece of land that we're going to purchase to build our business on. It's a space for you to build your website out in the virtual or digital world. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But inside of that hosting account is going to be a place where you can put software that will give you something that's called a URL. So that stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and it's the address for a specific page on the internet that usually is yourdomain.com, and it can start with www. And it can have a slash, and then after that, a name for a specific page on your website. Most modern browsers do not require you any longer to have the www, and you no longer have to put it on your marketing materials. Pretty much everyone is familiar with the World Wide Web now. So we're going to go away from the common knowledge, or go by common knowledge, to remove that www and get directly to the yourbusiness.com, or even when we're putting it into a search engine. Your URL again points to your hosting account. So your hosting account is your land that you lease. You typically do not own this. Technically, I don't think you really own your domain name either. You just own the rights to that name. But your hosting account, you definitely don't own unless you've managed to have servers in your basement, and then by now you're already done bored with me and moved on to something else. So hosting is something you purchase from another company. It does not have to be the same company that has your domain name registered. So you can register your domain names with GoDaddy and host your website on Bluehost. You can register your names with domain.com and host your website on HostGator, or you can have them all on the same company. Most companies that provide hosting provide some way to get a domain. If you do not have your domain with the same company where you have your hosting, then you will need to change something called the name servers, which is where that particular domain points to as a URL, to your hosting company's name servers, so that when somebody types in yourbusiness.com, then their browser will take them to your website hosting area. In other words, you kind of have to point things back and forth. So name servers may be a item that comes up with you later on. So hosting your domain, by the way, your domain costs will be anywhere from very minimal, which is $7 or $8 a year, all of the way up to $30, $40 a year, depending upon on what company you choose as well. You can choose to keep your domain stuff private. I don't feel like, I mean, my business, I'm a business. I'm going to get spammed. It just is the nature of the beast when you have a lot of stuff out on the web. So realistically, that privacy thing just simply keeps people from marketing to me. When you make your domain name private, you just hide your information, your contact information. Mine's everywhere. So I don't feel like I need to pay extra for having that kept private. Maybe you do. There's nothing that you're going to purchase from any of these domain registration companies or hosting companies that is going to harm you. The only thing it's going to do is it's just going to simply cost you more money. I tend to take the cheap way out. So, because most of the time, everything I do is going to be able to be at the lowest level of any of these hosting agreements, as well as the domain agreements. I don't buy a lot of bells and whistles. The only one I think anymore that is valid is the SSL, which is a security certificate, which means that people can securely look at your page And I think that that is important, and it's absolutely necessary if you have e-commerce. But for most of us, it's just an add-on that helps us a little bit with our Google rankings. That's a whole nother webinar. But for now, that's the addition that you might want to think about. As far as once we get the land purchased, now we have to erect a building on our physical business. And in our virtual world, we need software with which to structure our website. WordPress is the current choice that most people are using for their online presence. It's not the only choice. There are multiple other choices. But as far as capability for creating a professional website, WordPress is the choice du jour right now. So it is an online service for hosting your website and your blog in this case, because WordPress started out as blog software. Think of it like a piece of software, but it's not a piece of software that comes on a disk or lives on your computer. It lives out on the internet. It is installed on your website through your hosting company or obtained through a free account. So here's what that means. WordPress comes in two flavors. One is a very simple website blog that you can get for free and point your domain address to. It can be obtained on wordpress.org, and it doesn't have a lot of options. Unless all you're wanting to do is create a blog or do a really fast website, I don't recommend that option. You can also purchase a domain and hosting through WordPress if you would like. Again, I'm not real keen on that. It's not the way we do it here. I want to have a little bit more control over things. And so we tend to use either Bluehost, HostGator, or GoDaddy and purchase the domains and install WordPress through them. And you'll be able to do it through your cPanel, but you can do it through WordPress.com as well. So you can go to those websites and take a look at what they have to offer as far as WordPress.org and WordPress.com. And I'm thinking I got that right, but I may have got the .com and the .org reversed. Typically .org is the freebie stuff. So I'm going to hope that my brain is working correctly today. All right. So once you choose, so if you choose to go with GoDaddy, Bluehost, HostGator, one of those, you're going to have the capability when you set up your hosting account, you'll connect your domain to it. And then the next step will be that it will offer to install some software for you. And WordPress is typically one of those options. Once you install WordPress, then it'll give you a username and a password as well as an address that you can log into that goes into what we always like to call the back end of your website, which is where you have access to all the stuff that's presented to the public. So basically what WordPress is, in our analogy, is that it is the structure with which now we're going to place all of the stuff for our business. That's where you have your website. This is where the pages of your website exist. So your pages are things like home or about or services or products or contact or store if you have one, or your events, or your blog, which is actually called a post. So in WordPress world, pages are the static things on your website that you update maybe, but that pretty well remain consistent. Whereas your posts are the fresh content that's added every week as part of your blog. So remember the difference between a page and a post. So your pages of your website become very important because they are how you provide the basic information about your business. So this is very similar to having your store, and you have different segments of your place, of your business in a physical world located in different rooms. And some of the rooms may have duplicate information. in the case of your website. So your home page is probably the most important page of your website, followed very closely by your contact page. So you do want to have some very specific things on your website, and you want to have some elements that you want to consider for your website to be what I consider a good website, or a website that fulfills that purpose. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit more as we go along here. Your homepage, though, needs to, in a world where we have mobile responsiveness is important. The homepage is a lot of times only page that people on a cell device or a tablet will see. They don't tend to go delving deep into your business. So make sure that your homepage includes everything you would like a new or a prospective customer to know about your business. All right, mobile responsive is really important. Over half of the world now, or half of your clients, are viewing your website on a mobile device, either a tablet or a cell phone. Most of us now consume our email on a mobile device. Mobile devices are more and more present. There are two terms you need to be aware of. One is mobile friendly, which means that it will display on a cell phone or a tablet, which 98% of things will. It just is not comfortable to see. And mobile responsive means that when the website is accessed, a piece of code on the website goes and looks at the device that it's being displayed upon and then changes accordingly. So if it's a smaller screen, it makes everything go into one column, and it removes the navigation to be behind that little 3 lines in a menu deal. So remember, you want something that is mobile responsive. WordPress works off of a template system. So you'll pick a template to build your website within. So you'll basically pick a decorating package, and you want to make sure that your template or decorating package is mobile responsive. Other elements of a good website is that it have good content. Most people come to your website to get content. They want to learn about your business, and they want to be educated or inspired, and they also want to have access to what you sell. Websites should be visually dynamic. We don't expect to see a lot of text. We expect to see good imagery. And if there's a lot of text, people will leave. We don't like to read things in depth, especially on a screen. So make sure that if you have a lot of information you want to put, written information you want to put on your website, don't put it on your home page. Put it on pages where your users can select down to that level that they want to read at. Use a lot of photos to help guide them to the information that they want. Make sure your contact information is everywhere. Email, phone, if you have a physical location, your address. Nothing is more frustrating than knowing you want to go shopping at a store and pulling up their website and there's no address there, or wanting to contact a business because you finally decided to hire them and you can't find their email address or their telephone number. Your contact information, in my opinion, should be on every single page of your website, at the top or at the bottom or both. You also want a website that entices a customer to do something, even if that something is only to register for your email VIP list. Your website should collect the leads because that's what it's there for. Otherwise, it's like buying a booth at an expo and then not staying in your booth so that all people just wander by and see it. Maybe that builds a little brand recognition, but it doesn't create sales. So you want to entice the customer to action, so they either need to go buy something, or at the very least, and in addition to, you need to collect their email address so that you're able to contact them afterward and get them into your sales funnel. Your content should also be fresh and relevant. In other words, you need to periodically look at your website, and established businesses always have trouble with this, my own included, to go back and make sure that everything on the website is relevant. Fresh content is important to keeping yourself up in the Google search rankings, because Google will go through and index your website every 7 to 10 days. That's why blogs are so great, is because when you post a blog, that's fresh content. The search engines look at it and go, oh my, that's so cool. She has fresh content. Let's push her up the search rankings. And make sure your website's look and feel is branded to match the experience that your customers have wherever they find your business. So SEO, what you need to know. SEO stands for search engine optimization, and when you're creating the content for your website, you do need to keep this in mind. Keep your keywords, write them into your content. So think about that keyword list. What I do is I have clients sit down and make a list of all the words they think their customers use to talk about their business, and then circle the ones that are the most important. And then on your pages, you need to write that into the content. And when you create the page name or the title for your page, so let's say you have a services page, then designate some of those keywords in that title. For example, this last week in this class, I had a lady who did she was a forensic psychiatrist. So I would tell her when she does her services page to do forensic psychiatry services as the name of her page. That way, when somebody's searching for forensic psychiatry services, Google will give that page a little bit of a boost, because it's not only in the content of the page, it's in the title of the page, and it's actually the page's name. Makes sense? That's 3 places that Google sees, oh, those words are there, and now it knows that that page must have a lot to do with forensic psychiatry services. All right, keywords, write them into the content. Title, think of how others are going to search for you. This is not a place to use a lot of industry jargon. What you want to do is use the things that your customers are searching for. Meta tags can be accessed in WordPress through some type of a plugin. There are a variety of plugins where you can put in keyword lists and meta tags that help your site get found. However, be aware that there have been a lot of problems in the past with people using spam in meta tags. And so Google and other search engines weight, more importantly, the title of your page, the actual name of the file for your page, and the words in the content, as well as how often it's refreshed and how many links your website both refers out to and gets referred back to, as the bigger parts of the equation in how they're going to place you in the search engines. All right, finally, I want to talk to you about your options in getting a website made. So there's a lot of DIY options. There's a lot of very simple software where you don't have to know WordPress. You don't have to spend a lot of time with it. GoDaddy has a Website Tonight software. There's Wix. There's Weebly. There's Squarespace. There's lots of ones that have very compartmentalized, made for the layperson type of a website. The pro to this is it saves you money. The con is that I don't care how simple website design software is made, it still takes a lot of time and knowledge to create a website. It's the bottom line to it. You can hire a professional, which means that you're going to get professional from the start. The downside to this is that does cost money, and it costs more money dependent upon what professional you hire. Websites will cost you anything from at the lowest end $1,000 and in the highest ends up in the tens of thousands, depending upon what you're doing. So consult with several professionals and really think hard before you hire one. There's also other website professionals. Our business is one that likes to do co-creative website development. In other words, you hire us, we develop the website, then we give that control back over to you, and you're able to make your own updates with a little bit of training from us. The downside to this is you still spend time away from your business on the website. When you work with a professional, make sure you interview that professional, that you like their previous work, that it is a designer who will listen to you and your needs, that you choose a designer who is as knowledgeable as you can find about your specific business. I work a lot within the equine industry. That is a specialty. So I have a lot of knowledge within that industry and how to talk to people about horses. That saves my clients a lot of time because they don't have to go in and explain a whole lot of stuff to me about horses before I can actually create a website. Do communicate clearly when you go to hire the designer and when you actually get started. Provide samples of the marketing concepts, in this case a website, that you like and don't like, but be very specific. I like this website because the navigation is across the top, or I like this website because the photographs are colorful. Don't just hand a website to your designer and say, I like this website. That's not specific enough for someone who is designing a site for you. Do speak passionately about what you want in your website, but definitely make a point. I have a lot of clients who talk very passionately about their business, but then there's really just a lot of rambling. So it's hard for me to be able to write their content without knowing what it is that they're wanting to do. Also, be very clear with website designers about your deadlines and your expectations, and please, please, please listen to them when they give you their feedback for that. I think one of my biggest complaints as a website designer is that people will ask me questions like, how long will it take you to develop a website? Well, I can tell you, if you have everything organized and you have all your parts and pieces together and you have all your photography and your logo and your colors and you've made all of those decisions, I can develop a website for you in a few hours. But the chances are that you don't have all of that stuff the way it's going to be. And so we're going to be working on it for weeks, if not months. I prefer to develop websites over a process of several months, and I have become better at a designer in informing my clients of that. And then the ones who want to try to get it quicker, that they move on to another designer, because I know from my experience, designing a website is a long-term project. It's not something that happens immediately. Make sure you also follow up with your website designer. Don't just hand off all of your information and then never talk to them again and get angry at them when your website is not done. When we're developing a site here for a client, we like to have weekly progress meetings, even if the weekly progress meeting is to say we're still working on it or we're waiting for this or that or the other thing. So follow up is really important from the client side as well as from the designer side. Resources for you to be able to find a designer. Networking is great. Join your local chamber. They usually have web people on the chamber. Your local SCORE chapter will have information. Business expos and events are also great places to find designers. If you're in the Kansas City area, we have a great resource called Kansas City KC Source Link that hooks people up. Googling website designers in your area. Attend workshops and classes. I know when I teach live classes and workshops, a lot of times I'll have website designers show up in my classes. Your small business SBC and SBTDC, your small business centers, and your small business technology development centers also have them. And asking your friends is also very important. All right, before I leave this particular webinar, I do want you to know who not to hire. Don't hire your kids. It makes a very poor relationship with your children when your website doesn't get done. And just because your kids know how to use Facebook does not mean they know anything about marketing or how to develop a website. Yes, they're good with computers. No, they're not usually prepared to help you develop your business. They're kids. Do not hire insert your relative or friend's name here who is good with computers. Being good with a computer and being able to answer people's questions, again, does not mean that person is good with website development or marketing. And a website designer has to know more than just how to make the software work in order to create a good website for you. Also, do not hire your significant other who's not your business partner. This tends to make for divorces. Also, don't hire a college student who is just some random college student who's maybe not even in school to be website designers. If you want to hire an intern and you know what you want on your website, that might be an exception to this rule, but typically just going and finding a random college student kind of floats back up to hiring your kids or your friend or relative who's good with computers. Just because, and I'm speaking to my baby boomer clients out there, just because they're under 30 does not mean they're technologically advanced and that they have marketing knowledge to back that up as well. So, and also avoid people who are thinking of starting a web design business. These folks don't have a lot of concept about what it takes to create a website yet. And if you do hire them, know that you're going to be part of that learning experience. It takes a lot to develop a website, and I have a lot of people that I've met over the years who are like, oh, I could do that for $300, or I'll do that for $350. And then my clients choose, they'll end up being my client eventually, but they'll go and they'll choose someone because their budget is low. And then, I don't know, in a year, 6 months, they'll be calling me and we'll have a huge mess that we have to clean up because the person who was thinking of starting the web design business wasn't quite prepared for what it's like to develop a website for another person. These are all pitfalls that I see people try to get out of because they because they don't want to spend money on a professional designer. That is a personal decision, but I can tell you most of these avenues are only going to lead you to frustration and a lot of wasted time and effort that you could have not dealt with if you'd have gone ahead and hired a professional business from the start and then worked on actually making sales and building your business. And I think that may be a little bit of a harsh reality for some people, but it tends to be my experience with this. Make sure that the designer you do hire is someone you mesh with, and don't be afraid to move on. I have clients all the time that we just don't work well together. And at some point, and a lot of times it's even after the project is complete, they choose to move on to another designer because that person is more in line with what it is they want and how they want to work. I have another set of clients who I absolutely adore to work with on these projects, and we get along great. So there's a definite mojo that kind of has to happen between client and designer in order to make this whole hiring a professional thing work correctly. All right, thank you guys for attending. I hope this has helped shed some light on a few of the little more detailed parts of getting this very complex website proposition together. Have a great month, and I'll see you next month. Thanks.